This GXCC racing action powered by Dunlop is brought to you by SPX Logistics, Dunlop, RME Bearings and Transmission, and driven by Bikers Warehouse. Ventersdorp and round number 4 of the incredible GXCC Tour for 2021. This was always going to be the fresh one, the cold one, right smack bang in the middle of winter, but the riders that made the trip, especially for the juniors and the quads that were going to go out in the morning session, would be rewarded with prime riding conditions. Ventersdorp always delivers the most varied terrain and the most usable and raceable terrain on the racing tour. Cold, yes, but great tracks. The morning session will be all about a short 13 kilometer and a very fast one at that for our junior race, staying close to the pit area, and then the big 45 kilometer main loop where the quads would have the time of their lives. First gate, as always, would be the big, banging Q1s as they got themselves ready to open up the brand new virgin terrain. On the season, Henny Macau has been consistent. John Elwood has been strong, but it's been a load of second places. And the fastest kid on the block is Keenan Hammond. Whole shot this time around. Macau and the Honda got a good pull. John Elwood was strong around the outside, and the championship, or would-be championship leader, Keenan Hammond, had to slot down into a number 3 spot. Dust wasn't going to be a problem in the early laps, but it would kick up around about laps 2 and 3. Macau, Elwood, and the rest doing the chase down through the incredible maze, motocross and bermed off area right in view of pit lane. On the Q2s, we had a new winner at round number 3. That was Janneman getting the LTL hybrid off the front. This time it was standard practice as usual, where CD Goosen, the ultimate hole shot on the fast KTM, got clear air and he left Swart, Janneman and David Stratum to do the chase down. This was a good setup for our championship points leader as he ran clear air out front. Yes, he would have to find the track, but he wouldn't have to chase dust or roost. Quadmasters, and this has always been about Philip Boyce. He is so good off the pull, off the gate. He had to take a couple of low finishes at the early part of the season whilst he was on his second bike. Now he's got bike number 1, the big KTM, fired up, and he's going to be able to run off the front, staying ahead of championship points leader Cobus Ferreira and Henny Macau Sr., turning up at this event on an old Polaris to see what he could get done. Our brand new category for 2021 that has given us some amazing racing. This time around, the smallest gate coming out of our veterans class. And once again, the unstoppable Can-Am Renegade of Peter Goosen gets the pull to stay ahead of Piet Swanepoel and our championship points leader, Francois Berger. 4x4 power always going to be good off the gate, and this terrain will be perfect. Not too many long straights as well, and a lot of tech and twisting. So it's going to be a physical day behind the bars for all of our quad races. And then on the ladies, we had a great 5-bike lineup this time around. 2 Can-Am 4x4s and 3 rear-wheel drive standard situations. Liesl Barnard got the big pull off the line. The second of the 4x4 Can-Ams, that was Shannon Skiep. She got it done into the number 2 spot, leaving the rest of the championship would-be chasers back in the roost and the dust. Awesome to see continued growth on our ladies quad category, where we had a couple of new bloods making the trip for round number 4. Then back to the start queue for our junior category races, which once again gave us massive numbers on the gate. The first flag drop would be the stacked lineup of the senior 85s. 13 kilometers and fast laps would be the story of the morning 2-hour session. Tommy Scales once again getting the job done with Keanu Visser right in his wheel tracks. But Visser, when they got to the big turnarounds, tucked the front, he would go down in a blaze of glory and have to chase through from the back of the pack. That left the standard option, Kobus Bester, trying to run the numbers and get onto the back wheel of Tommy Scales. Visser would recover, but he made his life hard in the early stages. In the junior 85s, what a story for Mitchell Fallon, getting picked up in between rounds 3 and 4 by the Vans Husky Racing Squad. He very nearly pulled the first big hole shot of his career with Bruno Niebuhr right on his wheel. Watch out though, Corbin Miller on the 444 Motorsport machine was in good nick at this event as well, and the terrain that he loves. The Cowers were also in the mix inside the top 10. For the 65s, GJ Kutsia pulled the pin and got the numbers out front, with Manny Mayer and Jaden Else doing the chase down. Mackenzie Bam was right there in the early mix as well, running inside the top 6, setting herself up to stay well away from the trouble that sits outside of the top quarter in the massively stacked 65cc gate. Our future of the sport, the future is strong and the future is tasty for our 50cc racers. Jean-Luc van der Westhuizen, known as the whole shot machine, is large and in charge of this championship at this stage. He had early pressure though from Derek Milan, who was forcing it, and we would see if Wilco Deploy was going to be able to live on, running with a little bit of an injury on his wrist. He was still in the lineup though to tag those all-important championship points at the halfway marker of the season. We chatted to course director Vian Duplessis about what lay in store for the kids.
The kids are going to have so much fun out there. They're going to start off with a little bit of a windy section, crossing under the main road, under bridges. Then they've got a lacquered, tight and twisty section, probably about 5Ks, and then it starts opening up for them. They'll have some fast sections as well, going back into the bush, and then not a fast section, but the last section coming back also going to be nice and flowy for them. They're going to have so much fun. It's a 13K loop. We wanted to make it a little bit longer, but I decided against it. There was a rocky section that I didn't feel comfortable for the kids. So yeah, they've got a 13K loop, and I think some of the faster boys are probably going to do like 10-12 minute lap times here. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Let's start things out with the future of the sport, the 50cc Racing Warriors that did give us good numbers. We have seen better, but we've also seen massive growth in the 65cc's in 2021. Caitlin De La Rosa was out there first of the single digits, tagging a number 9 spot, with Peter Mayer up the road on the C999 and Allegra Kuhn just one position off the main numbers inside the top 6. Remember, big points being awarded and rewarded on the podiums for the top 6 riders. Derek Milan, even though he had a great start to his race, did have problems later on and would drop down to a number 6. And that would hurt him in the championship challenge as well. Remember, this is an all-important event as you want to be going and springboarding into the second half of the season in good shape. Some new blood inside the top 5, and we start to see a little chopping, changing going on here. 5th place this time around for the top lady, Marley Labuskakny. A great ride coming out of her, and a rider we'll be keeping an eye on as she takes her highest ever GXCC finish. Liam Foster also benefited from a couple of problems from the top pros up the road from him. He takes his highest ever finish with a number 4 ride at the muddy, freezing cold area of Ventersdorp. No issues for him. And even though there was a little bit of mud, it was all very achievable for the kids running the numbers. Jean-Luc van der Westhuizen had this one in the bag. He was extending way out front with something like a 6-minute lead, and then late on the final lap, he had motor issues dropping him down. He actually had to run his bike across the line, but still did enough for 3rd place. That still keeps him in the championship points lead. That meant that Declan Richards recorded his highest ever GXCC finish with a rock-solid number 2 spot. That'll also buoy him going forward into the last sector of the championship. And then what a story for Wilco de Plooi, coming into this round, still carrying an injury on his wrist. Just let the race come to him and gets rewarded with his second win on the season. With 4 rounds scored and 4 rounds still to go, Wilco de Plooi is still in the hunt for this championship. Confirmation of de Plooi on top for the second time in GXCC racing for 2021. Declan Richards records his highest ever finish in the 2 spot. Jean-Luc Ventersdorp is an important 3rd place to stay out front in the championship ahead of Liam Foster, Marley Labuschagne and Derek Milan rounding out the top 6. The biggest field of our juniors for the last couple of seasons, and especially in 2021, has been the massive field of 65cc races where we see almost 30 kids taking the lineup. Buller, that's Christian Bellingham, in his first 65cc season, walked away with a number 10 finish this time around, chasing onto the back wheel of Rubine Racing's Werner Kleinams. Liam Schippers didn't hold back when it came to the mud bog charging, and he smashed his way up inside of a number 8 ride. Schippers is getting himself more and more comfortable with that 65 at every single wheel turn. Matty Mayer, same situation for him. Matty jumping onto the one and only gas on the 65cc gate for 2021. We're expecting to see more of the red machines going forward into next season. He battled just off the box in a number 7. Up the road from him, taking the first of the podiums, was the first of the Kawasaki's. In fact, the top Kawasaki running inside the 65cc gate of Ben van Schalkwijk. Corbin Muller, running out of 444 Motorsport, also got himself on the box once again, and is starting to look good in the championship as he troubles the top 4 steps on the numbers. GJ Kutsia, after a great pull off the line and a hole shot, couldn't run the pace of the top 3 out front, eventually had to step off the 1, 2s and 3s down to a number 4 place, but also in good shape for the championship as well, with 4 rounds scored and 4 rounds still remaining. The last of the Mohicans, who has been incredible. Certainly, the first half of the season was dominated by this kid. Now, everyone's got the hurry up, and Hanyu de Kock had to settle for 3rd place. It's a great result, but he would have expected more. Mackenzie Bam, after getting beaten up at the last round, rebounded perfectly this time around. She's toughed it out this season with the top boys, and now she's starting to show her true mettle. 2nd place and not far off the win at round number 4 for Bam. Jaden Als, who has made the last couple of rounds his own, is now starting to stretch his advantage out and off into the distance. He's shown that he can dominate on the fast, technical and loose terrain. 1 or 2 little mistakes, yeah, for sure, but he had a good enough advantage to see the checkers once again at Ventersdorp. Confirmation of Als on top, Mackenzie Bam in a good position now, and that'll help her out in the championship chase as she tries to lock down 3rd place for the season. She's now at the moment ahead of de Kock, Kutsia, Muller and Van Schalkwijk. The Junior 85s is a bit of a mixed bag. We saw a lot of moving and shaking in the off-season where a lot of these kids aged out and went up into the Senior 85s. So there's a lot of different names that start to appear. Jay Lawrence was in the number 10 spot with Jake the Snake Notorious coming back from his injuries, building in confidence, building in fitness. 9th place. He won't have been happy with that, but he's happy to keep turning those wheels. Franco Ferri, the famous J400, always inside the top 6, had problems at this event though, and had to drop down to his lowest finish of the tour so far, down in a low number 8 for him. John Bart Moritz also peppering the field with a little bit of Green Machine. It's been a bit of a story in 2021 with the comeback of the Green Machine Kawasaki's. Mitchell Fallon, even though he pulled the whole shot for Vans Racing Husqvarna, dropped down as he's still getting used to his machine and had to settle for a number 6. That's still good numbers on the page and will keep him in the hunt for the top 6 in the championship as well. Raymond Language is a top 5 runner and a top 5 player in the series. He walks away with his magical number 5 once again. That seems to be where he finds himself so many times throughout the season. Chimolo Mozibuko. I love saying this kid's name and I love watching him ride. The 155 is starting to really become a GXCC racer. A little bit of background in motocross and now starting to become a player on the gnarly terrain that we go racing in and around Gauteng. Fourth place for him. Luke Battersby, one of these long game players, always in and around the top 3. This time around, he hits the sweet spot once again. Third place. He will be moving up then in the club championship as well as his regional championship campaign. Battersby on song. Third place coming out of round number 4. Clarkey is having one of his greatest comeback seasons to date. We've seen this kid come all the way through from the little ones. He's been a 50cc warrior for a couple of years. He did 2 seasons back on the 65s, and now he is starting to really gel with the 85cc machine. Bruno Niebuhr, though, has been the big jump up. He has got better with every single event and every single lap that he turns. Dominating in the 65s the last couple of seasons, and now climbing to the very top of the junior 85s to set his stall out and try and go for his championship in his first season. For Rubine Racing then, Bruno Niebuhr on the top step at round number 4. He'll be super happy with that, and so will the Rubine Racing squad. Clarkey in a 2-spot, Battersby third, Mazabuko, Language and Felon round out a very close run, top 6. And then the big dogs in the junior category anyway, the senior 85s. A lot of these guys hanging on by their fingernails before they age out and move on up into the 125 category. Alex Krobler inside the number 10 with Aldo Hoos up the road from him in a number 9. Riding out of the franchise company and CIT squad, Johan Vermaak. He has been inside the top 6 a number of times so far this season. This time around, he would have liked it a little bit more open as he challenged himself to try and get a better move on in the tech. 8th place was where he ended up. Johan LaRue was up the road from him inside of a number 7, and then Ahmed Hatting inside of a number 6. The top 6 is where the times really started to click up, and these kids were stretching out front. They definitely held the advantage coming off a good gate in the morning session. Didn't have to deal with too much traffic until they tagged into around about lap number 3. For Vans Racing Husqvarna, Timmy Blake is having the ride of his life. 2021 is all about the big kid on the Vans Racing Husqvarna. He's gelled perfectly with his bike. He's found the sweet spot at every single round, and he is sitting inside of the top 5 in the overalls as well. Keanu Visser, who came out the gate and famously tucked the front in turn number 2, did pick himself up and recover, but there was too much traffic and not enough laps. He eventually only got himself as high as a number 4 ride. Dwayne Combrink, who is definitely one of those kids who's about to time himself out, one of the tallest kids on the gate, praying for the day that Dad rocks home with a 125. For now, the too tall on the C750 takes a 3rd place. Kobus Bester, in his first season on the senior 85s, is the only rider at the moment who can possibly challenge onto the back wheel of Tommy Scales. They ran together in the early laps, but eventually the pin was pulled. Bester was left down into the number 2 spot once again, meaning it was this kid, Tommy Scales, who is all but dominating the 85cc seniors in 2021. Another checkers for Scales on top. Tommy the Gun Scales on top once again, firing out into the distance for his championship ahead of Bester, Combrink, Visser, Blake and Hutting. Strong lap times and crazy racing from our senior 85s. Juniors wrapped up tight in a bow. We now turn our attention to the main loop and back into DSP to talk to Vian Duplessis, our route director, about the big 45K'er.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me about the mud and so on, but you know, it's a little splash hole, but it's a rocky area underneath and on the surface, so they're not going to get stuck. If they lift their feet up, they're going to be able to go through without even getting wet. So yeah, nothing to worry about. The quads are going to have a joll out there. It's a 45K loop, and they're going to start off. It's going to be very tight and twisty in the first parts of the loop till they get to about 12Ks, and then it's going to start opening up for them. Then they're going to have some lacquer fast sections next to some mealie fields for about 15Ks with turns. It's not just straight lines all the way. And then they're going to come back. The last 10Ks or so is very tight, bumpy. So they're going to open up the route nicely for the two-wheelers later in the day. Out
on track, and welcome to the Top 4 show. San and Skip getting it done on the second of the Can-Am Renegades. This kind of terrain, and if it is technical and a little bit muddy and boggy, the 4x4s run absolutely perfect numbers. So new rider to the gate, and magic to see her running inside of the top 4, knocking 1 or 2 riders out of their normal positions. Judith Kruger is playing the long game in the season. Her and her husband running the most stock bikes out there and loving their full season racing with us on the GXCC Tour. We're going to see Judith move up well inside of the top 3 for the championship now with another stellar ride. Ursula Statler made the big trip across from Botswana. She has made a name for herself up there as a bit of a desert rat. She came down here to Gauteng to taste some freezing cold mud and enjoyed herself. The results show that as well. Second place at her first ever GXCC. We hope to have her back for many, many more. Liesl Barnard has started to get a grip on this championship as well. The last couple of rounds has been all about this lady and the Can-Am Renegade running clear air out front and being unchallenged. Perfect setup on the machine, perfect setup on the rider, bringing home the bacon and starting to run out front in the Ladies Quad Championship for 2021. Could this be the first season we see a 4x4 walk away with the big #1 plates? And if you get jammed up on the 4x4s, just click reverse. Nothing better. Moving up then into our new category for the veteran racers, the guys that aged out of the Masters. We give them their own gate. This time around at round number 4, it was just 3 riders making the queue. Piet Swanepoel walking away with a 3rd place to keep his championship hopes alive. Peter Goosen got himself fired up off the gate but couldn't run the pace of our eventual race leader. But Peter is now starting to eye up 2nd place in the championship points in his first ever full GXCC Tour. He's the father of CD Goosen, and the SPX Logistics father and son pairing looked like they may be challenging for championships come the end of the season in 2 categories. But it's Francois Berger's championship to win at this stage. He's put his hand up. He said in the first year of the veterans, he wants to be the big #1 plate. At the moment, he's doing it all right. He has taken more wins than anyone else on the tour so far. Ventersdorp was no different as Berger ran off into the distance and all but smashed the field on the big 45K. We're expecting to see bigger numbers in our veteran category towards the end of the season and going forward into 2022. For now, they've got one guy to beat, and it's Berger. Confirmation of Berger on top then in our veterans class against Peter Goosen and Piet Swanepoel. And for the ladies, Liesl Barnard ahead of Statler, Kruger and Skippy. Climbing the ladder then, 3 pro categories remaining in our quad races. First up, the stacked gate of Masters. HP Pretorius walking away with number 8 ride with Roxy Dos Santos, who does like things a little bit more wide open, dropping down to a number 7 ride. Remember, a lot of the Dos Santi do run the big 700cc Raptors, and they are not the easiest things to get turning. They do carry a lot of weight up high, so you see them really battling in some of the tighter corners. Fernando Dos Santos, same situation for him, as the bike was on 2 wheels more than it was on 4. When the track did open up, a couple of locals really enjoyed watching these quads in full flight, but the straights were few and far between, just enough to rest your arms a little bit before you went back into the tech. Jaco Kruger and his machine were custom made for this event. He scores another stellar top 5 and will start to improve in the championship. What he lacks in top speed and suspension, he gains back in incredible handling characteristics coming out of the most stock quad on the lineup. Congratulations to Kruger, getting another top 5 going and starting to progress in the championship. Cobus Ferreira, who had a stranglehold on the early part of this championship. Also a rider who decided to step off to his trusty LTRs and onto the Yamaha Raptor that he'd kept under wraps for a couple of seasons. The early part of the season and the layout of the tracks certainly suited the style of the bike. This one, though, was more technical and demanding, and it didn't work out for Ferreira this time around, having to take 4th place and record his lowest finish so far. That's going to make things tighter in the championship. Henny Macau Sr. was a late arrival to the 2021 tour, came back in with his 450 Yamaha, but at this round, for some unknown reason, had to step onto one of the oldest dogs out there, an old Polaris 650. But it's Henny Macau Sr. Give him a boat with one oar and he'll still make it across the Atlantic. Third place on unfamiliar machinery. Xander Branken is on a familiar bike though. He's been on the Can-Am 450 for a number of seasons now, with the race prep coming out of 421 Racing, and he records his highest finish since stepping up into the Masters Gate. Second place will see him jump up in the championship order as well. But they're all chasing this guy. Started off the season running the early part of the championship, 2 rounds in on an old Suzuki, whilst he got his KTM back together. Since he stepped onto the KTM, it has been wins at round number 3 and another win at round number 4. He is starting to climb the ladder in the championship. Watch out for the numbers to tighten up between Philip Boyce and Curbis Ferreira going forward into round number 5. So Philip Boyce, your reigning champion, starting to get the move on and starting to get on top once again. Boyce confirmed as the winner at round number 4 at Ventersdorp ahead of Branken. Macau Sr. Ferreira, the championship leader, in 4th ahead of Krige and Fernando dos Santos. Onto the Q2s and one of the most difficult gates to win in the 2021 Championship Tour. Paulo dos Santos rocked his big 700 all the way up into 8th place, but didn't like the tight and technical nature of the track. Likes to rip it more wide open. A couple of wrong slots didn't help him as well. Lou Erasmus, some new blood on the tour as well. Bought a box fresh machine all the way out here to Ventersdorp and was rewarded with a 7th place ride. Louis, one of the new bloods into GXCC Racing and starting to become a player not too far off the box on his first time of asking. Stefan Ferreira has battled to find his place on the Q2 gate in 2021. In and around 4th, 5th and 6th place the whole way through the season. Another 6th place means he will still challenge for a top 6 in the series come the end of the championship tour. 4 rounds still remain after this one. For the standout winner at round number 3 at Heidelberg, the fast one, Janeman Besadenhout, didn't enjoy the technical layout of this track where he couldn't stretch the legs on his big hybrid LTR, the same bike that himself and David Stradom have been prepping for the last couple of seasons. 5th place though, still keeps the points, growing but not exactly where he would want them to be. Almost famously known as the number 3 man this time around, 1 position off his normal seat at the table, 4th place, but still a very solid season. And it's a great championship that is being put together by the ever-consistent Rian Dick. 4th place will keep him buoyed going forward into the second half of the tour. Reinhard Swart, I'll tell you what, I had some money on this guy going into this season. He is so strong on the day. Seems to be one of those everyman riders, comfortable on most terrain. He had mechanical issues at the previous round that dropped him down on the championship points, but 3rd place, and I believe there's going to be a ton of top 3s towards the end of the season for Reinhard Swart. CD Goosen, who got the big hole shot coming out the gate and came into this round as championship points leader, did a good job to keep hold of that championship points lead. 2nd place, but he's going to have to start getting a move on and getting those wins going with 4 rounds still to go as he's starting to get closed down on the points tally. David Stradom is on the money at the moment and he's set himself a near impossible task, but he is almost on his way to getting that task done. A win at round number 4, but he is going to have the perfect end of the season, as it's now going to be a massive fight between Stradom, Goosen and Janeman to see who's going to walk away with the big number 1 plate. All running hybrid versions of original quads. So Stradom back on the money here at round number 4.
No, this was a tough race. A lot of tights. So 2nd gear, 3rd gear corners. This big guy doesn't like that. At least there was a few straights where I could feel like the first part of the lap I was just idling, and then the middle part was flat out where this thing just hauls, and then the end is very tight again. Now this was a very tough race. I'm sore. Halfway, yeah, I've still got a lot of work to do. There's still small niggles on the bike. It's going to take a couple of years to do the development on the bikes, but I'm happy. I mean, if this thing can do a race like today, then it can do any race. So.
And a quick word from our championship points leader, who's approaching this season with incredible maturity.
For me, this was like one of the best tracks I ever rode. It was so fun, and I just adapted to it. Yeah, it's looking good. I think I'm still in the lead for the championship, so we'll get it done.
Confirmation of Stratum on top at the Ventersdorp freezing cold Tech 1. Sidi Goosen, second place, remains championship points leader, but only just ahead of Reinhard Swart, Dick, Besadenhout and Ferreira. A top 6, but now it's a championship fight with 4 rounds still to go. Into the Q1s, and coming off his best ever GXCC finish at the previous round, Christian Ferreira couldn't get it going and had to settle now for a number 7 ride. Rudolf Senekes is starting to really get himself into that zone, comfortable racing on the GXCCs, and another one of the very rare Can-Am 450s out there racing on the tour. 6th place gives Senekes his highest ever finish on the tour. Stefanus Muller has been in and around the top 4 the whole way through the season. He's going to be one of those guys to put some money on. He's going to be challenging for a top 5 come the end of the tour, no matter what. The top 4 are the standard options. We've seen Reinhard van Jaarsveld also be ever consistent, seems to adapt well to the changing terrain as we move around the country. Remember, with 4 rounds counted, we've had almost 4 completely different look, feel and style of races. You go 5 months back to the first round, way back in Rustenburg. It's a very different terrain and a very different horizon as we look forward into the second half of the tour. John Elwood has been the closest rival to Keenan Hammond the whole way through the season so far. Both riders taking their worst finish at the previous round. John's motor letting go, and for Keenan Hammond, an injury forcing him to the sideline. They'll both be throwing away Heidelberg, so now it is a straight-on fight. Elwood has taken a ton of top 3s, but he's going to have to get that elusive win going if he wants to stand a chance of taking the number 1 plate. Second place and numbers on the page once again for Henny Macau Jr., the guy that has been developing along with Swanee these amazing 450 motocross engines, hybrid versions of the Honda TRX. He's a big guy, but he gets a move on this machine, puts a lot of development into the handling of the bike, and he says it's got just enough legs to try and run the pace of the more stock machines. Second place means he is stepping 1 place down to Keenan Hammond. Hammond loves this style of terrain. Himself and Sidi Goosen do a lot of riding out at Bronx, and they know they work on their technical riding. Doesn't matter about the high-speed straights. They said they will deal with what they have to, but it's corner speed, and handling. And that's why Keenan Hammond is back on top, coming out of Ventersdorp. Hammond's got more wins than anyone else on the season, and the injury woes from Heidelberg are now a thing of the past. We chatted to Keenan, coming in from a great win.
Yeah, definitely. We started off with some tight up and down stuff, and then we got out about 10 k's in, and there was some nice straights, but not some bumpy straights, so you still had to hold on. And then coming back, some tight, twisty stuff, some rocky sections, a whole bunch of different terrains throughout today. The points are looking good. I've been quite consistent this year, but I'm just going to take it every race at a time. Oh yeah, today front brakes went on the last lap, and the rear brakes also didn't seem to be working, so the last lap just busy freewheeling and hoping we didn't end up in a fence.
First time on the season, we caught up with Henny Macau Jr. to talk about his event and his hopes for the championship.
Yes, dit was 'n baie lekker dag. Dit was baie rof. Bietjie hard vir my groot gewig en alles. Maar dit was baie lekker, iets van alles. Dit het baie gehelp. Daar was vinnige tye, daar was stadige tye. Ons het dit baie geniet. Ons was net so 'n bietjie onfiks.
Here's confirmation of Hammond getting the win ahead of Macau Jr. and Aylward. Those are the three dicing it out for the championship at this stage, as Van Jaarsveld, Muller, Sonicus and Ferreira take us to the top 7. So for the quads and juniors, 4 rounds counted, 4 rounds still to go. We hope you guys enjoyed the show. Tune in next week where we pick up on the motorcycle pro categories. This GXCC racing action powered by Dunlop was brought to you by SPX Logistics, Dunlop, RME, Bearings and Transmission, and driven by the Bikers Warehouse.